Hey everyone, before we get into the content, I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge our sponsor for this episode, Hire Vets. Hire Vets is a nonprofit whose aim is to help 10,000 veterans thrive in civilian life. Through their comprehensive 6-month transition program and lifelong support network, their mission is to empower veterans to transition into a successful, purpose-driven civilian life by providing community mentorship and career support tailored to their unique needs. Hire Vets equips veterans for leadership roles in business aviation and beyond by fostering a mindset of resilience, teamwork, and growth. As a veteran, personally, who transitioned out of active service more than 10 years ago, I cannot tell you how important an organization such as this truly is. The programs currently in place through the military are terrible and do not appear to be fostered by veterans who truly understand active service and transition into civilian life. So once again, thank you to Hire Vets for your support of this channel. Welcome everyone to the Safety Wire podcast. I'm Tim Wade, your host. I apologize for not having an episode out sooner, but if you're familiar with business aviation at all, you know that this is a very busy time. Late in October, we have NBAA base out in Las Vegas, and then just last week, we had Bombardier's safety stand down in Wichita, Kansas. You know, both of these events line up right behind what is peak travel season in the US for the upcoming holidays. My guest today is someone whose name is prominent throughout all the events I just listed and aviation in general, and really does not need an introduction, but I have to detail some amazing things that she has been working on. So if it involves aviation, she's probably done it. She's pilot, professor, world-renowned author, a keynote speaker, and one of the most passionate advocates I've ever met for women in aviation. Erika Armstrong, it is a pleasure to have you with me.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Tim. I'm going to put you on my PR payroll. That's a nice introduction. Thank you.
Oh, I will be a hype spokesman for you anytime.
All right.
Well, wonderful. Well, you know, it has been an absolute crazy few weeks. So have you recovered from base at all? Have you recovered from stand down?
No, I mean, I think I talked to more people during those 2 weeks than I do all year long. So, and I always laugh because it's the largest gathering of introverts anywhere in the world, right? All these pilot gatherings. So we're all exhausted after that week, but what an amazing couple of weeks too. It's so exciting to see.
It is an emotional roller coaster because you meet so many new people. There's so many great conversations that you have, and so many unexpected conversations. I'm sure you see through your workshops. I know I saw through mine of just someone picks up on a little thing that you thought was insignificant when you were rehearsing for it, and then all of a sudden it sparks this massive conversation. So your session at Stand Down was thinking beyond the mistake. Could you talk to me a little bit about what your workshop was?
Yeah, and I'll just quick comment on what you said. At the end of my workshop, I had a gentleman from the FAA stand up and ask a question, and it was so funny because I could see the whole room. They all went, oh, "It's the FAA." So the questions changed after that. But so
I
my
feel bad for the FAA sometimes through Bombardier because I think they get a bad rap sometimes, but I do commend them that they come out, they're vulnerable, and they're very honest with us. So it is great that they continue coming out to the sessions. So warning to all of our speakers, we should be a little kinder to them when we're in our sessions.
They are truly. We give them such a hard time, and that's always going to be the case, right? They're our nemesis,
Exactly.
right? But in reality, these are awesome people that are just advocates for safety. So no, I appreciate them that they're in the room listening to all of us, right? So
Yeah.
no, my topic is training past the mistake, and just the general concept is that aviation 99% of what we do is to prevent the mistake, right? We just do everything we can to make sure that pilot doesn't cross that line. But my topic is okay, let's be realistic and realize that we're going to cross that line and make a mistake once in a while, right? So, what do you do in that moment? What's happening in your brain? What's happening to your body? How best to fix that situation if you ever get yourself into it? So, lots of case studies trying to understand. So we always talk about root causes, but I go even one step below that, and I try to figure out why they made that mistake. What in their environment at that moment caused their brain to think misunderstand the situation. So a lot of armchair quarterbacking, trying to understand how the brain works, but and then trying to take that information back to the newbie students and see if we can train them better the first time around.
Outstanding. You know, I've always found it extremely difficult, especially coming from a maintenance background, to actually hit root cause, because you can always ask why a million times. You know, it could go all the way back to, my dog died 3 years ago and I saw a picture of a dog and my mind wasn't in the right place. It really digs deep, but how you guys investigate root cause and causal factors is incredible. Your session was wonderful. So thank you so much for giving it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you have one incredible career. So, and I would say very, very few people have a career as impressive as yours getting into aviation. How'd you even get started in aviation? Where did your passion for this start?
Well, I found aviation by accident. I really did. I
Really?
was
Okay.
at the University of Minnesota. I was 3 years in, not quite sure what I wanted to do. I kept changing my major. I was working two jobs already. Still didn't have enough money to pay my tuition and rent. It was going to be one or the other. So I was just looking for a job that had really crappy hours. And of course, aviation has that. So there was an opening
Mm-hmm.
at the front desk at Elliott Beechcraft, it was called at the time, at the Flying Cloud Airport. And I truly picked it because it had terrible hours. So it fit in with my schedule. And so I walked in the door, not even understanding there's a phonetic alphabet. I still remember walking in and seeing all the Unicom radios and the radios for the line guys, and just being totally intimidated by the language and the smell and the characters. And but I just got into it and started understanding the business of it, and working with all the line guys. And of course, they're all taking flying lessons. So after hours, I'd be in the line shack quizzing them on their pilot stuff. And I'm thinking, I understand this. So, I just took a tipping
Mm-hmm.
point to actually realize, oh, maybe I can do this. I took one free flight lesson back then. The Discovery flights were free because they knew that they'd get you addicted. So took
Mm-hmm.
one flight, the flight instructor let me fly, and that was it. I was hooked. There was no going back from that day.
It's
So yeah,
incredible that you started off your career not even knowing you wanted to be in aviation, and it's blossomed into what it is today. That's amazing.
yeah, and that's why I think it's so important that we bring aviation to students before they even start thinking about what they want to do. So make them realize that it's something they can do. Right? Everything, it feels like it's such a long reach to get to that point, but try to bring in stories and like that so that people know, there's an opportunity in aviation. There's so many different jobs in it, not just being a pilot or a mechanic, right? So lots
Mm-hmm.
of opportunity
That
there.
That is the beautiful thing of aviation is we have almost every industry within our industry. If you're interested in medical, we have that. If you're interested in marketing, we have that. It's its own little world, and I love that. And, it's always hooked me. And I'm glad I was able to get back into aviation when I did, because I mean, like, I'm sure you've seen it. Once you get into aviation, you don't get out. You truly just stay here. It's wonderful.
It's like the mafia.
So it is, yeah. You get wrapped in. You're not allowed out. People come find you. You wrote an incredible book, which once again really goes back to you starting your career not even knowing you wanted to be in aviation. I'm amazed that you have truly amassed this career. It shows your work ethic. But you wrote an incredible book called "The Chick in the Cockpit," and from what I was seeing online, you have another book in the works right now called "The Art of Being a Pilot." Is that still in the works?
Yeah, and I need you to call me and nag me about it. Yeah, I've got it all roughed out. Most of it's done. I just haven't. It's a long slog to get it published, and so I'm just at that point. But yeah, it's
Well,
getting there.
God bless you, because I have no idea when you even found time to write the first one with all that you're working on. But that's incredible that you have the second one in the works and getting ready to come out. Um, I know it takes a long time to actually put it out, and it's exhausting, but also exciting. What was your driving factor when you wanted to start writing these books, especially the big one that has? I mean, it has over 3,000 amazing reviews on Amazon already, and it's world renowned. So, what was your driving force to start writing these?
There was a lot of them, and I'll just say this: if you read the book, you'll know why I wrote it. But
Okay.
I've been in a book club, the same book club, for like 22 years now, and
Wow.
so and I've always loved writing. Even in college, I was taking journalism, so I've always continued to write even throughout my flying careers through business aviation and the airlines. I continued writing, but we don't have a lot of books from the viewpoint of the woman in aviation, right? And I think I was, all of us who kind of were born in the late 60s have seen this generation of aviation change so much. It was kind of important for me to bring in the challenges that women have. I mean, the benchmark for anybody, men and women, is set really high. So we have a huge washout rate in aviation. So I think we need a little honesty in what it looks like, but also really explaining the joys of aviation, and what a career looks like. So trying to bring women into the flight deck with me, sharing some fun stories, of course, right? There's just a million great stories. And then also bringing in those social challenges that we all have to work through as well. And trying to raise a family with a career where you're on the road all the time. And it's just, it's different for men and women. We can do the same jobs, but we have different challenges.
Exactly. Have you seen the challenges, or at least the judgment and the stigmatisms towards women in aviation change since you started your career to where we are now?
The short answer is yes, but we have a
Good.
long way to go. And actually, just
Okay.
even the way you phrased the question was perfect, because it really is generational. I think my kids, they're both now in college, but I mean, they've grown up, and all that generation has grown up seeing more women in aviation. They really don't
Hmm.
think twice about seeing a woman in a pilot uniform, right? But still, the numbers are pretty small. We're still only at about 6% in the commercial aviation sector. But when I say that, though, realizing that the sector of business aviation, I see a lot more women, and that's kind of the pipeline into the commercial airline world. So it's getting better. Um, I part of my research when I'm doing pilot training is trying to understand pilot personality, and how your personality and your skill set affects your decision making. And one of the weird things I found along the way in my research, because people are always asking why there aren't more women in aviation. And, I think as a society, we kind of reflexively say, well, it's not very welcoming to women, which is true. But and the others, being gone all the time, which is true, but also flight attendants are gone just as much. And
Hmm.
that's still predominantly women, right? So what are those extra challenges? But when I was doing the pilot personality research, there really is a very specific skill set and personality that's drawn into aviation. And when I dug down a little farther, and the research just in general for personality types, a very small segment of women fall into this category of personality types. So there's actually a little bit of science behind maybe what draws people into an industry. And so I think it was 37% of this personality category were women. So when I'm looking at the ratios, maybe in our future, I don't think we're ever going to see 50-50, men and women. I think the ratio is still going to maybe only be about a third will be women. So a little
Okay.
science behind the topical question of it.
No, it's great to hear the research behind it, especially when you look at an industry that has drastically changed over the past 40, 50 years. We've gone from, just flying with, flaps in the stick and all the way up to completely automated crew stations and cockpits. And you got to think, what workforce are we now driving into those aircraft? Because the aircraft are completely different than our grandpa's aircraft that saw a drastic, downturn of women in aviation. So who knows? I mean, as the industry changes, I think we're really going to amass a lot more people that we might not have expected in aviation. When you go out on a hangar floor, this is the best example I can come up with. When I walk out on a hangar floor anymore, it is not just all of your big corn-fed harvest boys out there, busting their knuckles and turning wrenches. We have so many people that are completely geared towards avionics and electronics, and they're computer wizards at that point because the aircraft calls for that. So I think we're going to see that big shift in who's working on them and who's flying them at that point. So that is incredible how much you're doing to advocate for women in aviation, and as a dad, I really commend you for it. That's incredible. Tell me about your current role with Advanced Aircrew Academy. This is an amazing business model. I've known a lot of you guys that work over there for many years, and I love being able to work with you guys. So, what's your role right now, and what's Advanced Aircrew doing these days?
Yeah, I've been with them for about 8 years now, and watched them grow because they were kind of in the infancy of e-learning. And
Mm-hmm.
taking that, all those things that we used to have to do as pilots, where they would pull us off the flight line to come in for our recurrent training every 6 months or 1 year, depending on, your seat position, whatever. So Advanced Aircrew Academy puts together all of the general operating subjects. We've got 120 different topics for anybody in your flight department. So I started with the company wearing almost all the hats. We all did. It was kind of started as a mom and pop. So when I started, I was doing the instructional design, helping put together the modules themselves, doing a little bit of marketing. We are advocates of the industry, so we're always out at the NBAA events, all the local events. They keep us busy, and almost everybody who works for the company also has a role in business aviation. So that way, we take all of our business aviation pilots, we give them a subject to focus on. So we have subject matter experts, but they're out there flying side by side with you all. I'm sure you hear their voice on the radio
Mm-hmm.
today, so they can take that knowledge, weekly knowledge, back to us, and we find out what the rules and regs are changing, all the best practices that are going on, what are pilots struggling with right now, and of course the Teterboro departure, stuff like that is
Mm-hmm.
always. We try to keep updated. So rules and regulations are constantly changing, so we evolve with that software.
We have a pretty large location with FlexJet at Teterboro, and hear that name quite often, and the challenges coming into there. So yeah, that we're always hearing about all the issues that are going on out there. So hopefully we can get those ironed out pretty quickly. We mentioned when we were talking about women in aviation just how drastically that aspect of aviation has changed over the years, along with all the technology and the aircraft. Now, the downside of aviation right now is we do have some risk involved. What are you seeing right now with all of the wonderful eyes and ears you guys have out in our industry? What are you seeing as our most substantial risk in the industry today with how involved you guys are with the industry?
Yeah, well, this kind of actually touches back on what you were saying before on how the aircraft have changed and the skill set
Mm-hmm.
that's required is changing. So truly, even though pilots wear a white shirt, it's a blue collar job. When we were learning how to fly, we were actually getting dirty and oily and
Mm-hmm.
hydraulic fluid on us, right? And that's and to even go back one step further, previously aircraft flying was really about brute force. If you had failures, hydraulic failures, you actually had to have the power and strength to fly this aircraft, right? So just that little thing, element of aircraft systems has changed so much. So now the skill set that is required to fly an aircraft is understanding the avionics and knowing how to listen to the airplane now, because they all talk to you, right? So now we have that ability to have a breakdown in communication between the pilot and the airplane. So I know our generation is always worried about the stick and rudder skills, and having that fallback when everything automated fails, and that's absolutely concern. So we have right now this dichotomy of having set a high benchmark of that 1,500 hours to get into a regional airline, or that 1,500-hour benchmark. So we have a lot of pilots that are just grinding away in the sky, being a CFI, not actually
Mm-hmm.
touching the airplane, just building hours. So I think right now we're really struggling with this changing technology, and then having the old generation slowly retiring out, and we just don't have the quantity of skilled pilots. So it's not that we don't have a lot of pilots who want to be in the industry, we just don't have them trained to the point where they are that dynamic flight crew that can fly anywhere, especially in business aviation, right? Look at all the
Mm-hmm.
unusual airports you guys are flying into on a daily basis, where the majors now they're flying into the same major airports and over and over and
Mm-hmm.
over again. So business aviation has an entirely different set of skills and challenges that the airlines just don't have.
You hit the nail on the head. Pilots these days, as great as they are wonderful with the systems on board the aircraft, but the basic flying is happening less and less every single year. I don't know which numbers are true to believe anymore, but it seems like every year you hear less and less time that the pilot has actually spent flying the aircraft and not just working the avionics and the systems at that point. So hopefully we're going to see some change happen down the pipeline as we move forward. I'm going to close this off with one last section here, because one of the things I've absolutely loved about watching your career over the years is your amazing following that you have throughout social media. You know, I see your name every year. You have an incredible cadence for your social media posts. And for those of you listening, she has over almost 500,000 followers just on LinkedIn alone. So hopefully we'll get you up to 500 here soon. And, you know, your posts are always funny, but they hit the point as well. And you always try to address some relevant issues. What's your thought process when you decide on what you want to post or what you want to share?
Yeah, it took us a while to hit my stride and find that nice balance, right? So, my secret sauce is that I trick people into learning, and I do that.
Okay.
And to be in aviation, you have to have a really good sense of humor, along with that thick skin. So that's kind of what I try to do. And I think the tipping point for me to start gathering followers, and it was really hard to do at first, but to actually put my opinion out there, because of course you're going to have that element that's just going to go for the jugular, so you have to learn to just put it out there. Let people have a conversation. It usually works itself out, and so I try to not participate in too much of the arguing and just let it flow.
Mm-hmm.
But man, aviation has so many good stories and so many lessons. The things we learn in aviation can apply to almost any safety critical industry. And
Mm-hmm.
we've learned the hard way, right? So we'd like to take those things that we've learned and bring it to other industries. So I think there's a lot of crossover in the followers, and just tons of people who love aviation, maybe can't necessarily be in it, but still like to talk about airplanes. And so, man, all I have to do is mention airplanes and people start talking. So that's, and then truly from, anybody who's in marketing knows these days it's consistency. Things are
Mm-hmm.
in and out of social media in about 2 hours. So, the chances of me getting my content in front of you at any given time is pretty small. So it's just constantly feeding the social media stream, different times, different days, and different topics. So, but at the end of the day, you got to have some fun with it.
I really need to get better with consistency, especially because I've heard a few compliments at Base and at Bombardier that they like the podcast. I'm like, I'm sorry, I haven't had one out in 2 months now. I feel like I need to make that a bigger priority. And you also touched on something, I've always found it difficult to put my personal opinion out online because, yes, it is a very judgy culture these days, but also you need to have a sense of humility, which I've seen you have. You have to have a sense of humility when somebody contradicts your opinion, and you realize that maybe they do have a better line of sight than I did when I voiced that, and that's always been really tough for me. So thank you so much for sharing on your social media, and thank you for being on here. I wanted to give you a minute. Is there anything else going on in your world right now that you wanted everybody to know about?
Excuse me. Man, I've got so many things going on right now. No, nothing in particular. This is actually, you just touched on in the very beginning. We were so busy for the last couple months, and
Yep.
now when I got back on Friday, I mean, I sat down. I'm like, oh, I don't have to travel now for a few weeks, and so now this is our opportunity to take what we've learned over the last year. And so now I can write some articles. That's what I like to do after coming back from these, and just talk about the
Mm-hmm.
things that we've been talking about, bring that to the rest of the aviation community, people who can't attend the conferences because they're out flying, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I get to use this time now to help bring out the message of what we just learned.
Wonderful. Well, best of luck digesting all of the incredible information you received over the past few weeks. I know for me that's definitely going to be overwhelming. I'm still trying to dig out of just normal day-to-day emails, but it was outstanding seeing you at all the events. And thank you so much for always sharing your passion and what you're going through in aviation. It is definitely eye-opening, and your following is incredible. I know everybody wants to flock to you because you just have a very humble opinion when it comes to our industry. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for being on. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. And I'm looking forward to your next General Assembly presentation next year. So, for those of you listening, he had to get up in front of 501 people and talk for an hour, and that's hard to do. So, kudos to you to get up there and do that.
It was hard up until the moment my foot hit the stage, and then it felt great. That is if you have the chance to go to Bombardier, I'm telling you, it is hands down the best event you can attend for safety because of the people who attend. They're not there to put their name out there. They're not there to put their company out there. They're truly there to improve the industry. And you feel that when you're given these workshops. And yes, this was my first general session, and it felt great. I love the crowd. And if you were there, you know what I'm about to say. The guy with the amazing laugh on the sideline, love that guy. He was truly the one riling up the crowd the whole time. It was really cool to have him.
That's so funny because we actually sit over there because of him. So we look for him every year. So bless his heart for willing to really put the laughter in there.
Oh, for sure. It kept it alive and kept it fun because, yes, safety can get dry. So it was great to have somebody with a great sense of humor for it. So, Miss Erika, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. This was the Safety Wire Podcast.